Welcome. Thank you for lending an ear to the Voice of the Times for Friday, February 12, 2021. For today's editorial, in Southeast Asia, Filipinos the most disapproving of government COVID response. Wake up, IATF. The writing is truly on the wall. In two more international surveys, the Philippines has again been rated poorly in its performance or effectiveness in responding to the coronavirus pandemic. The country not only underperforms in the eyes of international observers and study groups, but our own people are also themselves viewed with disapproval and skepticism their government's management of the health emergency. In a new survey released Wednesday by the Singapore-based ASEAN Studies Center, Filipinos in the policy, research, business, civil society, and media communities gave the lowest approval rating for the government's response to the pandemic among Southeast Asian countries. Findings by the ASEAN Center showed that a majority, or 53.7% of its Filipino respondents from a more specialized cohort than respondents in national surveys, thumbed down the Duterte administration's handling of the health crisis at home, which to date has led to more than 541,000 infections and 11,401 deaths. Of the figure, 17.9% said they strongly disapprove, 20.9% were neutral, while only 25.4% were okay with government's response. Rounded up, that brings 19.4% approved and 6% strongly approved. The pandemic was seen by the survey respondents as the top challenge Southeast Asia is facing, followed by unemployment and economic recession and socioeconomic gaps and rising income disparity. The study had 1,032 specialized respondents from 10 Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN member states, with 6.5% coming from the Philippines, and was held from November 18, 2020 to January 10, 2021. Its margin of error was not stated. Most of those who took part in it were from academia, think tanks, or research institutions at 45.4%. From government at 30.7%, civil society, non-government organizations, or media at 9.3%, business or finance at 9.2%, and regional and international organizations at 5.3%. Those between 21 to 35 years old made up most of the participants at 34.9%, individuals between 36 to 45 at 30.6%, those 46 to 60 at 23%, those above 60 at 9.3%, and those under 21 at a measly 2.2%. An overwhelming majority of 72.2% from the Philippines said there is a need to encourage more science and health experts, quote, to contribute to public policy discussions and for government to heed their advice. In another survey published early this year, the Philippines was tagged as an underperformer in the suppression of the coronavirus. An assessment by another independent think tank placed the Philippines at 79th place globally out of almost 100 nations in handling the coronavirus pandemic. While health officials said they welcome such researches on the health crisis, they said the think tank study failed to grasp, quote, the complex nature of pandemic response, adding that, quote, we can't be comparing apples to oranges. This argument sounds hollow, however. It is no more convincing than the double talk of Palace spokesman Harry Roque Jr. whenever there is criticism of the administration. He can hardly tell the people to drop dead for their criticism, as it is the people who pay his wages. The overwhelming fact today is that the country needs a reality check on its policy response and program to manage the pandemic. Next month marks a whole year of the community quarantine strategy, which was first set in March 2020 and has gone on to foster the world's longest lockdown. While President Duterte has put his faith in the new vaccines to end the pandemic, his administration continues to labor with problems in its vaccination plan. An overwhelming majority of 72.2% of Filipinos in the Singapore survey said the government should be heeding the advice of science and health experts, more of whom should be asked, quote, to contribute to public policy discussions. This observation has weight because the administration has long been criticized for its militaristic approach to the health crisis, the president having top retired military officers to lead the Coronavirus Task Force and the IATF, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, emphasizing the policing of the population rather than treating and healing the afflicted. It is not surprising that in rating the best leadership in the region during the course of the pandemic, there was hardly any mention of the Philippines. And that's the editorial for February 12, 2021. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print. Subscribe to its digital edition or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And listen to the Voice of the Times.